Yes.
Do you think that a traffic ticket can be a reason for being arrested or
A traffic ticket, if you don't pay a traffic ticket, it can turn into a warrant, so yes. If you're driving without a license or on a suspended license, that could lead to an arrest, which could lead to you falling into the hands of ICE. So
or is that possible to be arrested on a trial and court or something else? No.
anything is possible. Honestly, anything is possible. The point right now is for our community to lay low. You know, we need to stay under the radar right now. Because anything, a traffic stop, a ticket, driving without a license, speeding, all of those things can lead to contact with law enforcement, which can then lead to contact with ICE. So we need to be very, very careful right now. Okay? All right, I'm going to move on. So we were talking about the general ways in which people can get benefits or get immigration relief. They can get it through their employers. I do not specialize in this area, but basically when people work for a restaurant or other businesses, the business can go ahead and petition for them so that they can get a work visa or an employment visa. And then there are humanitarian benefits, which is what we specialize in at Public Counsel. I specialize in the U visa, the VAWA, and the T visa. These are forms of relief available to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other serious crimes. We also do special immigrant juvenile status, asylum, and all other types of humanitarian relief. What you're looking for there, and I think this probably applies to many of you guys, or at least your clients, you're looking for whether or not your client has suffered domestic violence, and this could be within a marriage or not, whether or not your client reported it to the police, whether or not your client, if you're working with a child who either lives with one parent or has been abused, abandoned, or neglected by both parents. I'm not going to go through, you won't remember all of the eligibility requirements, so I'm just trying to give you sort of the red flags that you're looking for. If somebody expresses fear of returning to their home country, they may have an asylum claim. So all of these things like victim of violence, or if the child was a victim of violence, you would want to go, oh, you know, you might want to consult with somebody. Here's this referral list. Go talk to somebody about that.
So for all of those that you just mentioned, do you need like paper proof of like the domestic violence or the sexual or the asylum?
Okay, so in the U visa context, the U visa is a temporary visa for victims of crime. It encompasses domestic violence and sexual assault, but it also covers lots of different types of crimes. In that context, you do have to prove that you reported the case either to the police or to DCFS. Either one of those bodies could have investigated the crime. So in that scenario, you do need some police report. Okay, but then there's VAWA, which is similar but different. VAWA is for only victims of domestic violence, and it only applies to people who are in a legal relationship with their abuser, meaning a marriage or a parent-child relationship, and there's no requirement in that context that there be any report to the authorities. So, you know, I would just say that if you think, if it sounds like there's violence involved, you know, go ahead and just refer them somewhere so that they can get a consultation. I do have a little bit more specific checklist that I can give you that kind of goes over the requirements of U visa and VAWA that I've used a lot with the case managers of SHIELD. So that'll help you identify more closely if they might qualify for one of those forms of relief. But I would just say, look, if they're a victim of domestic violence and they're undocumented, just refer them over and let an attorney screen it. Yeah. Sí.
Hace tiempo, yo sufrí violencia doméstica, pero a raíz de todo eso me
So she's explaining a situation in which she was victim of domestic violence in her home country. She came here, the abuser ended up coming to the United States. Her child made a report at school, and DCFS was alerted, but she never reported the abuse to the police. That's a really good situation that may result in a U visa. I mean, I would need to see the DCFS report, But there's a lot of situations like that where they don't necessarily report to the police, but DCFS is alerted. As long as DCFS did some sort of investigation and was aware that there was domestic violence at some point, and if she was cooperative with DCFS, there's possibilities there. So even if your client says, oh no, I never made a police report, you'd want to ask, well, did social workers ever go to your house? Were they aware that there was violence in the home? And then request a copy of that report. It can be the detention report, the jurisdiction report, anything that kind of states what the allegations are, and that will help whatever attorney is intaking the case to determine whether or not there's U visa eligibility. Okay? Okay.